What's up, guys? For those of you who don't know, my name is Alfredo Mancuso, and I'm one of the owners of the On Some Shit brand and store here in downtown LA. Let me give you guys a quick rundown. So we're a clothing brand that started in 2009, and we opened a retail store in downtown LA in 2012. So obviously now it's 2016, we've been around for quite a few years, and I wanted to give you guys a quick rundown of what it's like to be a business owner, what it's like to be younger in the business and kind of like fashion world, and just give you guys a couple ins and outs, because there are a lot of questions in my videos about, you know, business in general, how to start a brand, and kind of like the details of what goes into owning something like this. So this is the front of the store, and it houses the majority of our clothing, shoes, bike parts, and other retail items that we carry. And on the back side of the store, we have a projector from when we have like video premieres. And this is the No Jumper studio. So this is where we do podcasts, both for No Jumper and TCU TV. All right, so aside from being the No Jumper studio, this is also my desk. I spend the majority of my time here working on a lot of different aspects of our business. And as you can hear, I receive a lot of emails throughout the day. So when you guys write to me on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and things of that nature, I get a lot of emails a day. I think I check about 300 to 400 just email and messages. That's completely separate from the group chats I'm in, all the other text messaging I do. And that's kind of just like a peek into what it takes to run a multi-platform business. But let me give you guys a little more history before we kind of like dive into like the business aspect. Since I am in a recording studio of sorts, I think it would be fitting to kind of talk into the microphone. Testing 1, 2, 3. But yeah, so as you can see behind me, this is kind of like the makeshift inventory boxes that we use. We literally get boxes, punch holes in them, and then, you know, separate them by size and colors and designs. But before I get into all that, again, I said I was gonna give you guys a little history, so let me tell you my background for starters. So, ironically enough, if you watched my TCU/No Jumper podcast I did in November of last year, then you kind of have like a pretty good grasp on what I've been doing my whole life. But for those of you guys that don't, and since there are a lot of you new subscribers, I'll get into it from the beginning. I lived pretty close to here. We're in downtown LA. I grew up in South Central, so literally there's a street called Central, and down the street southwise in this little area called Watts, which is a pretty ghetto area. When I was 13 years old, my dad passed away, and one of the pastimes that my brother, my dad, and myself really enjoyed was riding bikes. So it was kind of fitting that, you know, kind of like with the passing of my father, I really dove into something, and it's fitting again that it would be bike riding. I was going through obviously a tough time, being 13 and all, and I saw BMX on the X Games. I thought that was like a really cool thing, so my brother and I decided to get bikes, and we got our neighbors to do so as well. And it was basically 4 of us that would go out and pedal around every day and try and, you know, like do little tricks. But being that now my mom was a single parent and she had to take care of us, you know, money was really tight. So one thing that my brother and I did was we kind of like started shopping on eBay. And at the time, eBay was still kind of new and, you know, fun and fresh. So there was a lot of really good opportunities for really cheap and affordable things on eBay, because not a lot of people were bidding and stuff like that. So that's how my brother and I and all of our friends basically would get components for our bikes, you know. But basically at around 13, I already like kind of figured out the entrepreneurial spirit, in the sense that I knew that I came from like a limited amount of resources, obviously money. And I figured that in order for me to do a lot of the things that I want to do with my life, I was gonna have to figure out things that most other people kind of had. A lot of people can just ask their parents to, you know, buy them a new bike. I didn't have that luxury, so I had to hustle. A year after my dad passed, my mom had the idea to move to Lakewood. So when we moved there, it was a bigger town, a lot more people that rode BMX, and a lot more connections for myself to like kind of, you know, figure out what exactly I wanted to do with myself. And at about like 15 and a half, I kind of got spotted, got sponsored, and you know, at the time, I always realized that being a professional athlete would be cool, but it would be finite. You know, like your limbs can only last you for so long before you have to retire and give up the sport that you really love. So I was like, well, I don't think I can make this a full-time career, so I'm gonna keep going to school, go to college and whatnot, and I'll have a part-time job, you know, just to make ends meet. And, you know, if I wanna buy myself a pair of tennis shoes or whatever, then I'll have that luxury. All right, so looking back at that pivotal time in my life, And now that I could apply some business terminology to what I was doing, I realized a really important aspect of making that decision at a young age. And the choice I made at that age was to be diversified. And in business, diversification is really huge. And the reason for that is that you don't want to have all your eggs in one basket, as the cliche statement goes. And the reason for that is that there's always different things that happen in the market, in the world, in your life, in every aspect of our society. So while I was in school, I was learning, to socialize with people. I was learning the different material that would help me be successful later on in life, like math, using proper grammar, being able to write an email, being able to type very quickly and efficiently, and a lot of the things that, people take for granted at the time, but later on in life you really do use. I was in school, and I was also playing sports. So I played soccer, football, I played almost every sport. And as much as team sports aren't for everybody, the good thing you can learn about that is dedication and hard work. And playing football at the varsity level meant that I would have to practice almost 7 days a week at times. And during the summer we had 2 days, which means that I would go out and work out with the team in the morning and then in the evening. And that was pretty brutal, but that's one of the things that later on in my professional BMX career differentiated me from the rest, was that I had a really good work ethic. Even though I didn't have as ample amount of time as a lot of other pros, I did have a really hard working regimen. So I remember at a young age, John Hicks, myself, E-Man, Boy, and a couple other dudes that we rode in LA with, I would go out in the morning and we would warm up at a skate park with John Hicks. We would film a video piece for one of the media companies at the time. And then after that, we would go meet up with our friends, go ride around and, get some clips, find some new spots to ride. And after that, I would still go home, and then sometimes, if I was crazy enough, I would ride with a different crew of friends just for fun. And at that time, I was obviously advancing the most in my BMX career because I was riding a lot, meeting a bunch of different new people, networking with other people. And the way I look at networking is one hand washes the other. If I have something that I could bring to the table that can help my friends or peers, then I offer that up. And in return, at some point, maybe they have something that they could, fill me in on, or some sort of advice that I might be missing. That's really huge in networking. And later on in life, a lot of people end up in positions at companies or even in politics that could eventually help you further your career, your business, or your craft. So just to reiterate, some of the things that I learned at a really young age were diversification, networking, and learning the fundamentals. Again, arithmetic, English, even history. A lot of these things will help you in the long road. At the time, you might think they are, irrelevant, or you're never going to use them. And yeah, some things like advanced calculus, I'm probably not going to really use in a business aspect. But if you're an engineer or you're in physics or anything like that, all those things would be very necessary for those fields. But doesn't mean that you shouldn't have kind of the basic concept of these things down, just in case you can ever apply them in your work environment or even just during a conversation. All right, so fast forward a few years. I already have a few years of riding bikes and traveling under my belt. I'm about 18 years old, and I blew out my knee. So this happened right before I turned 18, actually. I remember I was 17 and a half. I was about to graduate. I was riding some dirt jumps. I overcalculated and shot way too far. See, physics would have came in handy at that time, because I would have known that in order to jump a 30-foot jump, I needed to clear the 25-foot jump with just enough speed. But I was nervous, so I jumped even higher on the 25-footer, had more speed, and then overshot the 30-footer. Blew out my knee. So at that point, it really hit home that being diversified will help, because obviously if I can't continue my BMX career, at least my scholastics and my work experience would help. So I got knee surgery. I knew I couldn't ride for 6 to 8 months, and I'm a person that has ADD, which at the time seemed like a curse, but now in business and doing a plethora of different things is actually a blessing, because I have a lot of things on my mind, I have a lot of things on my plate, but because I'm always all over the place and I don't like downtime, I can get it all done. So I realized that without BMX, all I was going to be left with is school. So I decided to get a job, and I applied a few different places. I worked at a pizza place for a few months. That was cool, but not really up my alley. Then I worked at a cell phone company, so I got the idea of sales, which that was cool, but I didn't want to be stuck in a little tiny office all the time. So I wanted something that allowed me a little bit of freedom. And lo and behold, I ended up applying and got a job at LA Fitness. So that kind of killed multiple birds with one stone, because I had a place where I could meet cool, good looking, in shape people, and I had a place where I can get in shape and rehabilitate my knee. So that was pretty crucial. And I had a place where I could meet really driven salespeople, and that was really important. And I remember that one of the jobs that we had at LA Fitness was we had to go prospect. So what this meant was that myself and two other of the sales counselors would have to go to the malls and talk to people, basically trying to coerce them to come into the gym. And we had a bunch of witty little pickup lines and stuff like that to, I'm not gonna lie to you, a way to meet chicks, and then you can kind of like see like a bigger kind of like jock dude, and we would go up to him and be like, hey man, you should come work out at our gym, whatnot, here's a couple weeks for free. And it was pretty fun. But at that job, I did learn the fundamentals of being a good sales counselor, and things and cues, and just even body language, the way that people position themselves when I was having these meetings to sell them these like $200 to $300 gym memberships. And that's something that I really took and carried on and applied it throughout the rest of my life, were these like personable sales tactics, and not just trying to shove a product or a service down your throat, but just like what people really want and their fears, and just kind of like the psychology behind it. After LA Fitness, I decided that I wanted to work something in BMX that allowed me flexible hours, so that once I was back on it, I can travel and it wouldn't be like a big problem for me to be gone for a few days or weeks or whatever. So I asked around, and then someone mentioned that my friend Fu Vu, who owns Epic BMX in Westminster, might have an opening. So I went over there and I worked there for probably like a month and a half, 2 months. Like I said, I always had the entrepreneurial spirit, and I was always really organized and ADD, and I decided to really help my friend Fu, kind of turn his business, not around, but Epic's always been a really successful business, but I felt that there was things that I can do to help it get even bigger and better. So I helped renovate his website. Another thing that I'm really big on is learning things. I think that as a human, one of the biggest things that we can do is use our brain and to its full potential. And obviously, what better way than learning as much stuff as you can. So, if there was a thing like web design, then I took a couple classes in high school, I remember, and I was like, you know what, I really want to apply this. So I built my friend Fu's website, which I think he still uses to this day, which is pretty crazy. Fu, update your website. So yeah, started with the online world and, listing his inventory, and then, picking out products that I thought were gonna move faster, and, all these other cool things. That time was around, I'm gonna say 2007, 2008. And for those of you guys that remember, at that time, the US was hit pretty severely with the recession, and a lot of people didn't have disposable income. So, you couldn't afford a really nice car, or some people couldn't afford a car at all. So the next best thing was bikes. And being that at Epic we sold beach cruisers, fixed gears, road bikes, BMX bikes, everything. We mainly focused on BMX, but we had all the other kind of branches to that tree of bicycling. So with Fu, we decided to open an eBay store. So basically, I would work at Epic, but while I wasn't helping customers or building bikes or building wheels or any other hands-on aspects of bicycling, I would, list different products on eBay, see what's doing better, see what our competitors are up to and whatnot. And within a few months, that store really took off, and we were grossing almost as much as the actual brick and mortar store did online. So that really turned me on to the whole online world and how big of a reach you have when you could basically target the whole world. So between, again, my BMX, school, my jobs, and this online store that I started, I really had a good grasp of ways that I could generate income that allowed me still to ride bikes, travel, have fun, and have a flexible schedule. Right when I turned 21, I got the opportunity to travel a lot more. I was riding for DC Shoes, Volume Bikes, Demolition, a lot of different brands, and I had a lot of opportunities to basically travel the world. And I realized that at that time, I should focus on growing myself in all aspects. And even though I was generating really good income, make good money, buy my own car, put money away and save, invest in different opportunities. But I realized that, being young and being able to travel the world on someone else's dime, i.e. my sponsors or whatnot, and that was an opportunity that I might never get again. So I decided to capitalize on that, and I kind of put the whole eBay thing a little bit on the back burner. I was still doing it, but just not to the same volume. And, pardon the pun, volume, because I was on Volume Bikes at the time. But it was pretty fitting because at that time was kind of the decline of fixed gear riding, which at the time we were making a killing off of. And yeah, so I started, at that time I ended up going to about 10 different countries. We did Southeast Asia, so Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia. We did Spain, I had done Germany, I went to South America. Like, I was all over the place. For the next 3 to 4 years, I really focused on that. And as luck would have it, right around, I think, my 24th birthday, and obviously the more you're riding, the more you're putting your body at risk. And about summer of 2011, I ended up re-injuring the knee that I got surgery when I was 18. So it lasted for a good, I want to say that my knee was problem-free with that for about 4 years. I didn't completely blow out my knee this time. I basically just had some slight tears in my ACL, and I had some damage to my meniscus, so I needed to go in for a meniscectomy. So they basically needed to grind down some of the cartilage in my knee and then make sure my ACL was properly attached and whatnot. So I had my second knee surgery, and that was good for about another year. And right at the end of 2012, I blew out my right knee again. So at this point, I was pretty sure that all my sponsors were gonna drop me and whatnot. And right around that time, I had started hanging out with Adam22 from the Come Up. And for those of you guys who don't know, at the time, the Come Up was the most popular blog in BMX. And Adam was really popular because he owned and operated that blog. And he just moved to Long Beach, so he and I started hanging out, you know, riding all the time, going out, chasing girls, you know, whatever dudes in their, you know, early 20s do. This is gonna be my third knee surgery again, so I was like, you know what? After this, I'm gonna lose all my sponsors, so I probably should start buckling down. So I was wrapping up a business degree at Cal State Fullerton, so I thought, you know, during my rehab, I'll finalize everything here, decide if I wanna get an MBA or whatnot. And then one night, Adam was just kind of like, hey, I've been trying to find this accountant for the Come Up. And I was like, well, I have an international business degree, maybe I can help. So it turned out to be just a job of helping him find an accountant, turned into me doing the accounting for the Come Up, which then turned into me figuring out that there's a lot of different aspects of the business that we can improve upon, and actually turn into a real business. And lo and behold, we started working together, and I mean, it's been almost 5 years now, and I mean, things couldn't be better. You know, because of the Come Up and, you know, taking that on, we grew it from like just a small blog to what it is now, which is the biggest media company in BMX. And with the popularity of the Come Up, we decided to really push forward with OSS. Then we turned it into a popular clothing brand. And with its popularity, we opened a shop in downtown LA and one in Shanghai, China. And then with the added success of those, you know, we started reaching out to like friends that were kind of like starting in the underground hip hop world. And I don't know, it's been like a year and a half, and then the advent of No Jumper, and now Adam does a really good job with No Jumper, and it's taking off hugely. It already rivals the Come Up. So I feel like all of these things really wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for myself and Adam coming together and utilizing both of our strong suits. For Adam, he really has a strong voice, and he really has no problem facing, you know, like critics and just putting himself out there. On my end, I'm a really hardworking person. I'm organized, I'm driven, and I try and learn as many things as possible. So those are things that are natural to a lot of entrepreneurs and different kind of business owners. I want to wrap all this up by just saying to all of you guys out there that want to start a business, I'll probably start doing more of these type of talks with you guys and giving you guys like a lot more input on what I know. But if you're someone that wants to start your own business, whether it's a bike company, parts, frames, you want to get in the apparel world, you want to be in on the media side of things, you want to be a photographer, a videographer, a team manager, you want to work for a bike company, whatever it may be, you're never too young and you're never too old. The advantage is that the younger you are, the more suitable your brain is to learn a lot more things, and you can absorb things like a sponge basically. And also, you have no problem working for free or for very little money. So one of the biggest things I recommend to a lot of young people is to find an internship, or just go help out somewhere. Whether it's just like sweeping and cleaning up at a bike shop or a tattoo shop, or whatever it is that it interests you, go out and start at a young age, because there's a lot of things that you can learn, there's a lot of things that you can apply to other aspects of your life, and it's all a learning experience. If you're older, by then have a lot of experience that you can bring to a table, and if you're smart and you've been saving your money, then you can invest in different kind of companies. But one thing I do definitely want to make sure that you guys all understand is that owning a business isn't like randomly planting a seed somewhere, leaving it, and then coming back and hoping you have a really nice tree with a lot of fruit. No, you have to be there every day, cultivating it, micromanaging it, macromanaging it, seeing all the different changes that happen in the world, in politics, in the world economy, whatever it is. A lot of people have this like idea that you own your own company and then it just does really well on its own, and then you just kind of live off and, you know, like collect the money whenever you want, and just enjoy life. No, you have to be there all the time. I myself work 7 days a week. Between vlogging, writing, owning these companies, being the manager of the store, being the owner of the store, whatever it is, like I have a lot on my plate and I'm constantly working, whether it's emailing people, designs, working on production, making sure that all the inventory is set, making sure that the employees are doing what they should do. It's a lot of different things. But another cliche saying, do what you love and you never work a day in your life. So as much as I say I work 7 days a week, I feel like I don't work any days a week because I'm doing something that I'm very passionate about. So it just feels like something natural. Like without what I do every day, I would be lost. And another thing for business owners, it's never gonna be the same day. You're gonna find new challenges and new adversities every single day of the week. Whether it's you come in expecting to just fix your bike and all of a sudden you realize you have a leak and you have to go change a broken pipe, or somebody broke a window, whatever. There's so many different aspects of business. It's just a multifaceted, very intricate world. But again, if you have that hard work, that determination, and that work ethic, then you can get it done. So for now, I'm gonna wrap this up. But if you guys really enjoy this video and anything that has to do with business, let me know in the comments and I'll do more like it and I'll go more into depth. And if there's businesses that you guys are interested in or how things work, just let me know. I'll try and dive into it. Obviously, I'm a talker, so I can basically ramble on about anything, but just kind of like cut me off when I'm going off on a tangent and let me know if there's like one thing that you really like how to make it in the apparel world or whatnot. My background in business and what led me to the path that I'm on. But like I said, I'll be doing more of these videos, and with your guys' help, we'll target in on things that really interest you guys. So before I bore you guys, that's gonna be all for today. If you guys want to know more about me, check out the TCU interview, which I'll link right here, that I did with Adam22 a while ago. A lot of you guys have been asking, so he and I will be doing a new one soon. And as always, thanks for watching. I really appreciate all of you guys. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and tune in for tomorrow. Later.